Welcome back, subscribers and people that have spent too much money on simulation equipment. If you tried to play Dirt 4 with a direct drive wheel such as the SW20, any OSW or anything that happens to use the MMos force feedback drivers, you will have found that though your wheel is detected in Dirt 4, there's no force feedback and things are a little bit wonky. Fortunately, a guy over at www.eksimracing.com forums has found a solution, Mr. zappadoc, I believe that's his name, and he's posted a really good guide on how to do it with the XML files that you need to put into some game folders, and then your wheel is detected. I'll put a link to that forum post and I'll put a link to those files in the video description, so you can click on them and you can get that into your game and get going straight away. It's really not very hard. Thank you, Mr. zappadoc. Back rub and butter for you. Okay, now I can talk a bit slower. I just wanted to get that initial bit out of the way for those of you that type in a search and want the answer to your problem without having to watch a 40-minute video. So, once you've actually got your force feedback detected in game, you will find that the default force feedback is absolutely horrendous. So I spent a good hour and a half today. Yes, that is my life. I spent a good hour and a half today just messing around with the force feedback sliders, primarily on the tarmac stage and then on some of the dirt stages, to get what I think is a good baseline force feedback setting for those of you with high torque direct drive wheels. Now, I'll put the settings on the screen. You can see what I've put in game, and you can see what I'm running in the MMos profiler. Now, to explain why I've picked these settings and give you an idea as to my choices, obviously aspects of this force feedback are subjective. Basically, it's a compromise between getting stuff that gives you information from the game. Obviously, we don't have any arse feel in a driving simulator, unless you've got an even more ludicrous setup and you've got sim vibe and everything else. Don't even know if Dirt 4 does proper sim vibe, but most of us only have a steering wheel, so I've tried to get as much feel from the game as possible with these settings. Maybe that's not completely realistic in terms of steering column feel, but you know, there you go. And I've also specifically tried to eliminate as much as possible that sort of oscillation force feedback that you get with games that clearly were not designed with a direct drive wheel in mind, like Dirt 4. Now, what that means is if I had to put some dampening on the actual input, and the settings do mute some of the force feedback, but in my opinion it has reduced that oscillation as much as possible before getting rid of some of the more useful effects and feel as to what the car's doing. You might have also noticed that the force feedback isn't ridiculously arm-wrenchingly strong. That's because, from my knowledge, rally cars, unless they're the older rally cars which would have ginormous steering wheels on them, typically don't have absolutely mental forces going through the steering column. I mean, there's plenty of examples of drivers accidentally pulling the steering wheel off whilst doing a stage and then managing to drive with their hand actually on the steering column itself. So it gives you an idea of how strong the forces can be in general. So again, this is all set up mostly for comfort, general realism, and a compromise between mitigating some issues that you get from direct drive wheels with games that weren't designed for them. And finally, one thing I have noticed with Dirt 4 is that this steering just feels quite vague in general, even when you set it up properly. And I found this when using other wheels as well, like the T300. I did a lot of testing with the consumer wheels. It's just really vague and general anyway. So what I have found is if you actually set the steering rotation lower than what it is in game, that sharpens things up a bit. Obviously that means your steering is then not one-to-one, and that's arguably cheating and somewhat artificial, but that does seem to make things feel a bit sharper. And to be honest, even when you're running at 900 degrees and you've got it all set up in the game, it still has weird filtering when you move your wheel and the visual wheel doesn't line up properly. So, well, there you go. I think this game does have a bit of the old consolitis, rather unfortunately, but hopefully Codemasters will keep developing it. And at least now, thanks to that forum post, as I say, link in the description, it's playable on a direct drive wheel, and you know, everyone can play it, which is always good. So I hope that helped everybody. Don't forget to drop any questions in the comments. I'll answer them as soon as possible. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. Happy racing. Enjoy having no money in your bank accounts, and goodbye.